let's talk about face shields for just a moment. Now, y'all know I'm a face shield guy. I don't turn on the lathe without a face shield. But I will let Nick talk about that. There are exceptions on spindle turning, correct, Nick?
Yeah, there are, and I don't typically wear a face shield unless I'm at AAW, because they enforce that law there.
Yeah.
But I walk in the shop and I put on my safety glasses. These are prescription safety glasses. They're polycarbonate. They have the side shields on them. And when I leave the shop, I lay them on my desk and put on my regular glasses. But I'm wearing these all the time I'm in the shop. So, and I've never had an issue with any of them, but, yeah, you only get one set of eyes, so take care
And
of
that's
it.
because you're spindle turning,
Yeah.
and not something that.
I very seldom do any bolt turning, so I do some other large things, and when I'm doing large things, I not only wear a face shield, but I also use a mask for dust and all that, so. I'm gonna pass these around. Facebook has these photo books that they'll send you for a fee, and you can flip through them and see some of the things that I make. Like I said, I've been in my space for 34 years. And I am a production woodturner. I am not an artist. I don't have a studio. I have a shop. And I make things that people need. I very seldom make anything just to put in a gallery or something like that. Everything that I make is for an order. One of the boxes I'm going to do this evening, I've got 80 of them in the works right now. They're little acorn boxes. And when I finish these 80, it'll be almost 1,400 of them I made for the same company. And it's funny, the guy saw the article I did, I don't know, 15 years ago or whatever, on threaded boxes. And it was an acorn. And he came to me and he said, I want you to make a couple of hundred of these. And I said, I'm sorry, you can't afford it. He said, what do you mean I can't afford it? He can afford it. But I said, I'm not making hundreds of them that are threaded. I'll make them so that they just pop when you open them, but we're not making hundreds of them that are threaded. So, and I have the Baxter Threadmaster, and it's fun to use and it's really nice, but it takes a lot of effort. So, they give them to new employees at orientation, and it has an oak tree laser engraved on it, a tiny little acorn, and it says cultivate. And it's all about cultivating the culture of the company. So it's what we've been doing, and like I say, up to about 1,400 now, so whatever works. So I also do a lot of architectural and furniture parts. That's the primary thing that I do. I have been doing that for a long, long time. I started out many, many years ago doing shows and doing bowls and all the gift items. I still do the gift items and I wholesale those, but there are very few turners in the metro area that will do what I do. And everybody complains when they come to me because they said, you're the only one around. What are we going to do when you quit? I said, I don't know. And I don't really care.
Training somebody.
Well, I've got two guys. One of them works for one of my customers, and he wants to get more into wood turning. And he's talking about coming on board more. And then the other one has been with me off and on for about 15 years, and he's got his degree in the culinary arts, and he wants to be a brewmeister. And he still works for me part-time, but he doesn't really want to do this. And his dad's a fine furniture maker, so.
And if they'll get on the waiting list, Nick does personal training.
I do.
And it is amazing if you have a chance to get some training. I was fortunate to do the hot session that Charlie arranged at one of the other clubs. It's good, but the hands-on training is good, and you still take a few years.
Oh, yes, I do. And I've got somebody coming next Friday that is making Windsor chairs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so Windsor stools. So, but I do that, and I also still teach at John C. Campbell. I've got a class starting the 11th there, and it's on the boxes that we're going to do here. And there's still one opening in that glass. I don't know why, but there is.
Very good.
So the first one we're gonna do is a loose fitting lid. And the loose fitting means that you can lift the lid right off. It doesn't pop when you open it. And most people prefer that because if you're old like me and you have arthritis, just getting the boxes to open can be a problem. So I've got a piece of maple here. I'm gonna turn it between centers, put a tenon on each end. I very carefully find the center. And I'm using a step center. It may take me a minute to get used to this machine. It's not gold. Hey, it's better than that one I had to use at my Woodturners. The centers didn't line up on it. So I missed it by a little bit. 3/4 inch roughing guys to take the make it even. Running through it. On each end.
Dennis said over just shaking his head, you're already done with that. He has to make a living. He ain't got time for that.
Here's a 3/8 Bedan tool to put a tenon on each end. And this is a 1/16 inch fluted parting tool. And typically I just make a mark and then take it to the bandsaw if we don't have a bandsaw here. You do not want to cut all the way through it. We'll cut it down to about a 1/4 inch. Reaching for the switch.
We can move it to the
I'll get used to it. So I've got it down to about a 1/4 inch. That's close. Knockout more. And I like these step centers. They're great for production work because you can turn things without turning the machine on and off. Radio's on it, taught me that a long time ago. He said, son, you're wasting too much time turning that machine off. So this is a big mark chuck, and you can't have too many chucks. I don't like to change jaws. So this is a 3/8 inch spindle gouge. So it's going to make a finicky cut across the band. And that should be slick as it can be. And we're going to do a little bit of shaping. Now, I'm going to take this down, not very far, because if you take it down beyond half the overall diameter, when you start to hollow the inside out of it, it'll start chattering on you. And I'm going to take this out so I don't get a hole in my elbow. And if you want to see this on video, we just did a video at AAW in Portland, and it's not very long. It's about 15 minutes, and it's on the same box. So put the tool tip right at the center line, and I'm just going to push in, straight in, right at the center. Then I'm going to rotate the tool about 45 degrees towards me. And we'll come out to just under 1/8 of an inch. We'll do that again. And I'm gonna chamfer that a little bit. Do it one more time and see if I can square that in the corner. Should work. Now we're gonna go ahead and start following it farther. We're gonna leave a little shoulder for the lid to rest on. If I were Richard Rappin, I'd be turning the tool upside down and doing it backwards, but I'm not. And you hear that little chatter, that's because this is a 3-inch gouge, and I'm about 1.5 inches off of the tool rest. So I'm gonna switch to a 1/2 inch.
What speed you planning?
It's at 3,860,
I thought it was pretty.
and it's only there because it won't go any faster. So,
Hey, but you know, it does a lot better.
oh, it does. So, and this is all scraping because it is in-grain turning and we're not utilizing the bevel. But when you take a spindle gouge like this and turn it at 45 degrees, you know what you end up with? A negative rate scrape. Yep. And it does a really nice job, so. Sorry. Now, because it is a spindle gouge, it's probably going to leave some little ridges in there. So this is one of the cases where I actually use a carbide tool. And it will get rid of those ridges. And leave a much smoother surface. And this is one from Woodpeckers, and it actually has a 30-degree bevel on the bottom side of it, so you can make it a shear scraper. And it's not as aggressive as holding it flat.
Hey, it only took us about 2 hours to make the thing like
That's because we were going really, really fast.
It took 2 minutes, 2 minutes to do it, and it seemed like it took
I
longer.
know, fine.
I have a very technical measuring device. It's close enough. And it's fairly uniform thickness. It's not overly thin. There's a little flat place in the bottom, so I'm going to hit it one more time. You have to push a button after you rotate it.
Too many buttons.
Oh, I didn't put the little light over here. That's what's wrong. Remind me in Texas, I want a couple of these.
I will make sure you get one that's one. They might even donate you one. That one is donated to the club. Woodturners Wonders. Goes on the back of the tool list, shines inside the box.
I'm just gonna hit this lightly with a little 150 grip. I'm not gonna try to put a finish on it. I typically use Minwax Life-On Poly for most of my production work. I do finish, and I try not to finish any more than I have to. My standard policy for doing my production work is because I do a lot of work for furniture restoration people and folks like that. I do not disassemble anything, and I do not reassemble anything, and I do not finish anything. which solves a lot of problems. This box can be made with or without a little bead base at the bottom. I'm going to add a base to this one. Almost didn't leave enough room to get the tool in here. And you can vary the shape considerably. The possibilities are literally endless. Go back to the parting tool. I'm going to undercut the bottom just slightly.
Is that the Nick Cook parting tool?
It is.
Not joking.
The Sorby came out with this probably 20-something years ago, and I make a lot of honey dippers and a lot of boxes, and this takes away so little material. I think it's the best one on the market. It's also fluted here, and by being fluted, it creates two little knife edges that slice the wood instead of tearing it. And it makes a much cleaner cut than most things do. So we got that done, and we can either, let's see this. Oh yeah, this will fit right on there. Then we can finish up the bottom. The other way of doing this is to create a jam chuck, since it will fit the chuck. The 80 boxes that I'm working on in the shop, I'm down to this point of just doing the finishing of the bottom. And then I have to have them laser engraved and then individually number them. They know where every one of them is. So this will be the lid. When I'm doing the production run, I do all the lids on the acorns first, and then I come back and put the lids to the body of the box. So this is going to be the underside of the lid. And doing it this way, the grain will line up. We're going to take the calipers and measure this opening here. And then I'm going to add about a 1/16 of an inch to it and get it close. And I'll actually fit it. Back to the dam tool. And that's too tight. And we could have jam fitted that to do the bottom, but we've already done it, so. I don't like this switching system. And we want this to lift off without any resistance. I love that sound.
I'd love to be in your shop tomorrow because you're gonna reach over there on that power mat and hit the control front.
It's just a little, it'll stick on there, so I don't want that to happen, so I'm gonna take just another 10 thousandths off.
Just one more set.
10,000, that's it. And now we're gonna remove some material. Some multiple woods. I actually learned this from Chris Stott, who has long since retired from wood turning and moved to Spain. But he made numerous trips over to the US and taught classes. So we're gonna do a little transition here before I put the knob, if you wanna call it that, or the, and again, I'm not Cindy Dozer, so I don't do a tiny little spinning wheel. I like something I can grip and get a hold of. So for the transition, I'm gonna put a little bead here.
Nate, do you do any sanding afterwards?
I'm sorry?
Do you do much sanding afterwards?
Not a lot. I usually hit it with 150, 200, and then 400, or 220 and then 400. If it's, a special piece, I'll go up to 600. And then, but also, if it's gonna be nice and special and I wanna put more coats of finish on it, I'll sand it, put the 600, and then maybe sand it again, and then I'll usually buff it and put dry wax on it to make it really slick.
When you sand, what speeds do you typically?
On spindle work like this, usually fairly fast, 2,000 to 3,000, yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
I
and
just thought you would maybe go a little lower.
you can, but I mean,
You
it's
just
it's just removing material quickly, so it works either way. So I've got a little bead there. And hard maple is one of my favorite woods, so it doesn't require a great deal of sanding when you get it right. I'm going to switch to a 1/4-inch bowl gouge just to remove a fair amount of material quickly. A little bit more depth on that detail. And I have fairly large fingers, so I want something I can actually grip. And although this is a bowl gouge, it has more of a spindle grind on it. I use it for things like this, and I also do my spinning tops totally with it. And just get in there a little tighter.
That one must be sharp.
It is sharp, and I don't like it to bang against my other tool, so it has diapers on it.
That's your most used tool in your shop, isn't it?
Almost.
That and the rough and galv.
Sledgehammer. You laugh, I'm making a sledgehammer handle now. There's a 3-foot long golf tee. I'm not sure why they want it, but it's what somebody wants, so that's what we're doing. I do a lot of work for country clubs, and I've done a number of golf tees that were 4 and 5 feet long.
So a 3-foot long golf tee and, what was
On the point of it is a stone sledgehammer head.
what was the baseball bat you done with
It
Braves?
was 8-footer. So it's a very big bat. And they break it out and use it occasionally for various activities that they do there. At the same time I did that, I did a band leader's mace for Home Depot for game day. And I had a week or two to work on it. And then the day before they picked it up, they called me and said, "We're afraid the band leader's going to drop it and break it. And we have one day set up for filming. Can you make us another one?" We did. We charged them extra for that. So,
Rush job.
but it's 60-something inches long. There's a 3.5 inch ball at the top. It comes down to 5/8 of an inch at the bottom. And then on top of the ball, they put a hammerhead.
Wow.
So, and if you look closely, the grain lines up.
Very nice.
And that now belongs to the club. Like I said, I'm teaching a class at Nancy Campbell starting on the 11th. This is what we're going to do next. And this is what I've done hundreds of.
So John's trying to make a comment. Say out loud what you're saying.
It's like 20 minutes. It's been up for 20 minutes.
I'm sorry, it took that long?
I told you he would have to slow down to show us what he was doing.
So, but when I do these, I literally do all the lids first and get them finished. And then I put this block in and get it to fit. And each one of them is fitted individually. We'll go through some of these other things. This is a button box. Button on top. This is cross grain. This is a clamshell. But it makes it a nice little box to hold your keys or whatever.
Gary, are you gonna go home and make each one of those? He went out and ready in the morning.
This is probably the simplest form. You turn the piece and put it in a chuck. You take a parting tool and part down 3/8 or 3/16 or 1/4 inch, and then shear this off, and then you hollow this out and put it back together. And this one has a ball on top of it.
Now that one, do you hollow it with a turning tool or do you?
Not hollow it with a
Force it.
turning tool. No,
Okay.
we're going to do the next one with a turning tool.
Yeah, I just knew that was real deep.
Yeah. So this is like either a butter dish, a salt box, or something to keep your garlic in. But I like to do these square corners.
It's different.
a little bit different,
Oh, yeah.
little OG shape and then a lid. So, and they're all simple. Hmm.
There you
So, this is one of the ones they'll do next week. Not all boxes are round.
go. That is a box.
It is a box.
That's
And
box box.
the grain does match up. So. And this one we're not doing because even on the Powermatic 3520C, doing these three corners, the lathe will walk across the room because you've got to spread them out. And I had an engineer the first year I did this in a class, and he did one, and he said, can I make another one that's twisted? I said, sure. So he offset the centers, and it just twisted its way up. And it makes a nice box, but it will beat you to death. So. This is just the plain typical cylindrical box. And it did pop when I made it, but with the humidity changes and all. But, and this was hollowed with a turning tool. This is probably one of the easiest ones to make, and we'll make one of these in a little bit. And this one's really tight. Needle box, and it's all done with drill bits. And it's quick and easy, and it's a great way to use up all your little scraps that are laying around. Does fit some way, yeah.
A needle box, or we done shorter ones with toothpick holders.
Then
Pill box. Pill box, yeah.
I'll also do them as a 30 caliber. And there's, oh,
There you go.
so again, it's just drill bits. But there's a company up in Ball Ground that they now have Woodturners that work for them, but over a year and a half, I made over 8,000, is it 323 bullets? Yeah. That they use for, what did he call it? Enhancing the flavor of bourbon. I made them in cherry, maple, and white oak. And you drop them in a bottle of bourbon for 7 to 10 days, and it takes away the bite. See if I can find all of it to this one. So this one, I call it my Ming jar. So it's just a hollow form, and the lid fits down over it, and it's not tight, it's just loose. And that's one lid. That's another style of lid. Another one. And another one. So the possibilities are endless. This you can make into a stamp box, or it works either way, right side up or upside down. I don't like the pinion on this one, but it's just a plug. So they'll do something like that. That pinion was too big for that box, but again, the possibilities are endless. This is one of my favorite ones. And the lid fits down inside, but it overlaps. So, and
What are you doing in your spare time, Nick?
drill boxes. I can find all the parts. This is another needle box. Again, it doesn't take much material. This is a Richard Raffin style box. It does line up at some point. About there. is a box on a pedestal.
That was pretty, that's pretty.
So. And I think that's about it. This is another cylinder with a little bit more style to it. It's got a decoration in the lid of it. I didn't like this one at all. It's funky. So we're going to make the acorn. So I start out, I cut all my blanks to make 2 out of each one, lids. And then I take it to the bandsaw. This is down to 1/4 inch. So I cut one off. And because I do so many of these, I do drill these. We're going to start off by drilling up the end of it. I can remember how to turn on the feed. And the whole key here is to make that bevel glide across there, and it comes out slick as it can be. We're going to drop the speed down to 400 to 600 RPMs. And we're going to drill this with a 2-inch bit. And I don't know why Rockler sells these bits. They're really nice bits, but they're like 6 inches long. And if you put one on here and you get this thing going too fast, it will torque the bit. I don't know why they don't make them a 1/2 inch shank instead of a 3/8 inch shank. And I've talked to them and they said, well, nobody else cares. So I do, but obviously they don't care. So some somewhere between 400 and 600 RPMs. This is a 2-inch. Mine doesn't do that. I'm gonna put a little pressure on it.
We may have to go down with a slower square too.
I can spend all day doing this.
110 goes,
Oh,
we drop down to the slower.
Yeah, we probably should have dropped down to the lower, but that's all right. We've only got 2 to do. And the reason I drill these is because obviously it's faster and they're more uniform. So. The bit gets hot too.
Real high.
So I've got that drilled, and the important part is this, the sides being square in parallel in uniform. So now we're going to take a 1/2 inch spindle gouge. Do not throw away your short spindle gouges.
Yeah.
They're great for drilling. And I'm going to go in another 1/2, 3/4 of an inch. Then we switched to the Mike Hunter Badger tool. And I was doing these one day, and John Lucas stopped by to visit. He lives up in Tennessee, but his parents live in Logan or Lawrenceville, somewhere out in there. And he stops by occasionally, and I was doing what I do. He said, "Why don't you do that with a badger?" I said, "What's a badger?" He said, "Well, Mike Hunter makes it, and it's really nice for what you're doing." So he left, and I went in and I called Mike Hunter, and he said, "I got one on my desk. I'll put it in the mail tomorrow." And now I have two. He also makes little tiny ones for doing the hollow ornaments. But instead of just being flat across the top like most of the carbide tools, it's actually dished out. So it does an amazing job. You turn it to about 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock. Oh no, there's a check in my wood. Oh, well, we'll make it work. So that's got it fairly clean. I'm not gonna sand this so I can pass it around. And you can see what kind of cut it made. And I'm gonna measure. I have these marked, and I need to weld them so that they don't move. But that's a little bit deeper than I normally go, but that's all right, we'll make it work.
You're not gonna charge extra for that crack, are you?
No. Free.
Worried. Probably the pressure changed from you having to drive so far south.
Probably. And I didn't bring my passport, I was concerned about that. Rotate and then push.
Tomorrow, everything will be normal, you don't have to
Yeah.
worry about it.
So while I had it in the other direction, or other orientation, I would have gone ahead and sanded and put a coat of finish on the inside of it. Very good. But, yeah. When we first started making these, he wanted them pointed on the bottom, and he had these plastic egg holders that he put them in, but they kept falling over, and I finally talked him into letting me make them flat on the bottom so that they didn't have to have the little egg holders, and they stood up on their own. So that's what we do now. You want to pass that around and then send it back to me? We'll get started on the bottom of it.
Pass it around quick because he's gonna finish it up.
But you can see the finish off of that tool on the inside. It's pretty amazing.
Has the badger the whole tool, is it just the?
It's, and he normally sells it without a hand, well, he says it with or without a handle. I've got two, and I made one of the handles, and one of them I got from him.
Okay, so the shaft itself has.
The shaft is tapered, and he makes a whole variety of specialty tools that, and I'll pass this around too while we're.
You say that's mine?
You might get them back.
But I think it's about $150, but, and all the carbide tools are, and I don't know what the tips cost, and that has a, one of the odd, it's the Trox bit. Torx, yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to have the special little, and he gives you one when you get them, but I'm gonna pick up a couple of extra cutters because the two I have, I've been using for 4 or 5 years now. And if this hasn't changed, this should be the
Maybe.
rough diameter. And this. And you should know if you're making boxes, the longer you make the tenon, the better chance you have of fitting it. The shorter you make it, the closer it has to be. So,
He needs that back.
yeah, just toss it.
That's why I said it's gotta go around fast to be ready for it now. So you have the whole thing, you know. Okay, it made it.
Oh, pretty good. Thank you.
Dennis is gonna take it home, I think.
Okay, so this is set for about a 1/16 inch larger than what it needs to be. So I rough it down to that. And like I said, I've got that flat in there, and I've got this long enough. And I'll taper it just a little bit to get it right on the end. And before you ask, yes, I have gotten on them. They're so tight I couldn't get them off. And that's probably not there yet, but
Pretty close.
my experience is you can always take more off. It's really hard to put it back on. And every once in a while, I just go too far.
Get a little fast.
Thank you. But if you do a whole bunch of these in a row, that fits, it doesn't pop, but it fits nicely. So now, and I always fit the lid before I hollow it out. Because if you hollow it out, it's gonna have some give to it, and it's not gonna fit very well. So this is a 1 3/4 inch bit. Put a little torque on here. So slowly. There's a gentleman up in, is it Richfield or Richmond, North Carolina, here in Messenger. And he does these birdhouse Christmas tree ornaments, 200 at a time. And he and his buddy put together a pneumatic tailstop. And he just pushes the button, it goes in and comes out. So I'm moving slowly, but again, that will be hot. So I go about halfway down. There's no little light. This little light is a lifesaver for doing stuff like this. Again, I'm going to use the 1/2-inch short gouge as a drill. Put it in there. And we'll come up the side of it just slightly while I do the rest of the hollowing. We'll go back to the badger.
I have a real cheap air compressor.
Hmm?
I still have a real cheap air compressor.
Well, I have an air hose right here. And then I make the top and the lid match. Now it pops.
Amazing how it changes with hollowing it out.
And this is the diameter of the base.
Maybe never get your, no, you don't have very much clearance on the very end where the head stop. Have you ever hit your check with it?
No, I haven't.
What, anything?
I have gone through the side of it though. Through the side of the box, because I hollowed it deeper than I thought I had. And you know your skew is sharp when you get stuff like this. They should know how to do this by the time I finish.
Absolutely.
You have to turn it off where you can stop it with your hand. And this has the long jaws on it. Ooh, this one doesn't want to go in here.
Well, it's still fairly new, so
Yeah, they get like
you'll
that.
break it in for us.
I left the, one of the other big marks with long jaws on it, on a machine with a box on it, so. I have, 6 machines running it all day, just rotating amongst them, doing these, so. Oh, you have to push it. I'll get used to it. We'll get used to it. And undercut the bottom just slightly. Just flat. Wrong track for you. That's the sound we're looking for.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, this is soft maple we're gonna use for the needle box. With a walnut lid.
They turned that big old lamp, GAW about this tall, about this big around and just under an hour.
Yeah,
And your point?
You slowed down.
well, he had to talk.
Yeah, if he hadn't had to tell us what he was doing, he'd probably done it in 30 minutes.
Turns it and then you set him. Ready to go.
Then I had to get help getting up.
Yeah.
If I'm doing many of these, I put it between centers to turn it down, but
Yeah.
so I'm just doing one.
Turn it, push. Lay a bit of speed and it'll be fine. He's almost done turning before it even gets up to speed.
With a bigger chunk for the lid. I tell you can get rid of a lot of stuff doing your full boxes. The little coffee scoops that I do, I keep a box on my desk and I give them to people when they wander in. In one of the stair companies, I gave one of the guys there a couple of the coffee scoops, and he said, "Why don't you just give these away?" I said, "Well, it's scrap." He said, "Well, do you need some more scrap?" I said, "No, I'm trying to get rid of it."
Pass that one around.
Sure.
You can let your friends have some.
I'm sorry?
You can let your friends have some.
Oh, yeah. I do.
He does.
At Louisville, I gave away almost 100 of them.
Oh, wow.
I was talking about the scrap one.
Oh, well, call me and come by. There's always a pile of stuff there.
Maybe the furniture guy needs to get rid of some more.
I had a guy come in yesterday, I'm making some finials for him. And he's got scraps out the wazoo that he can't use, and he's looking for a place to get rid of it. He's about to start a maker space up in Jasper or Elevate, somewhere up in there.
We've got several guys in here that make the beads of courage.
Is the what?
We've got some guys in here that does the beads of courage.
Oh, yeah, right.
They would love to have that stuff. You guys give, you and Kevin done 23?
28.
28.
Donated 28.
Yeah, it was, some of them are square.
Got 3 square, the
Three
rest,
square.
the rest was round.
So those pieces would be great if they donate those. Beads of courage is a good program.
Yeah, it is. Not embarrassed to have it, never made one.
I haven't either.
So this is a 5/8 inch bit. This is going to be the lid to the box.
Eventually.
Slowing down slower than it speeds up. I'm going to go in about again. Found it. That's going to be the lid to our needle box. And I could get 2 more out of this chunk of wood. Found it. Lovely, just a little bit. It'll be all right. And open end wrenches are actual sizes. So instead of setting a caliper quite there, but almost.
So we had a modified request on this for height.
Oh, I've made a few, and I made hookah pipes for an Indian restaurant.
Yeah.
And they provided all the brass hardware. And, it's nice to have a aircraft gun boring bit to do those, because they were 20-something inches long.
Oh, wow.
And I had to drill them from both ends, so.
And the gun bore bit, if y'all don't know what it is, it's a drill bit with a hole in it, just air. Just air going to it.
So by putting that back on there snugly, I can make this final cut. Yeah, I'm just gonna leave it a little large and then we'll come back and connect it.
You know, we're usually doing good with one demonstration on that. I think we definitely got our.
I overshot it. Oh, well.
You can't retire until after I do. I gotta retire and come down and spend some time with you.
I'm older than you are already.
That's right. You're more durable though.
Like spaghetti.
That'd say right.
So this live center has no center point in it. So I'm going to use it to stabilize it. I'm only off a little bit. Not bad for eyeballing it. I can use most any machine, and I can usually use most anybody's tools. There's some people that have to have everything stiff. Being on the board of AAW a long time ago and having to deal with people that had to have everything just the way you wanted it, the demo that is conversion was just a little contrary.
Yeah.
There are some prima donnas out there.
There are.
There's your needle box.
Dan, you gonna go home and make one of these?
But I mean, it's great practice. It doesn't take long, it doesn't take much material, and things like that that you can give away, people love it when you give them something like that.
The only difference is that it takes us all day to make that.
No, it doesn't. It just takes a little practice. I didn't take the W off the bottom of that, but this is what I do all day, every day. Sir?
Hey, don't blow all the money out of
Looking
it.
through,
Mhm.
there was a section where you had finial day. You had all these finials.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get an order for like what, 80, 100, whatever, are you using a template of some sort to keep it consistently sized? Because those look remarkably dimensionally correct.
I have calipers.
So you just,
What I do is I take a piece of wood and I mark the distance between all the details. And I put a real fine saw curve at those points so that my pencil just falls into that curve.
Okay.
And then I measure the diameters. I make the whole thing the largest diameter to start with, then I'll have all my calipers laid out.
You just do it by hand?
Yeah.
That's crazy, man.
And, the guy that came in yesterday to do some big 14 and 19 inch finials for him for, garden gates. But, he said, what do you mean you don't have a duplicator? I said, a duplicator's only good if you're gonna make thousands of something. Most of the duplicators that you can add on to a lathe like this, you're not gonna get any detail out of them at all. A long, long time ago, I did the AWFS, which is like IWF on the West Coast, and I did it for SCMI for their little T124 lathe, I think what it was, and it was a duplicating lathe, and it had a pre-cutter and then a cutter, and you stand there with one hand and you crank this big thing, but there's no details whatsoever. It had a little pointing, like the carbide detailers, and that's what it did, and you had to spend a day standing on it.
So just simple form.
Yeah.
Wow.
So in order to do really nice shapes and get detail, you're gonna have to spend $40,000 or $50,000 on a Centuro, and then you have to spend, you have to set it up to make thousands of the same thing. It's like a friend of mine in Savannah. He bought a CNC machine, and he spent $141,000 on this machine, and then bought the dust collector and the vacuum pumps and all that in addition to that. And last time he came up, he brought me some push sticks he made on it. I said, excuse me, but that needs to be running, making door frames and doors all day, every day.
That kind of.
Yeah, I mean, in order to pay for that. And his wife's a little ticked that he's not doing that all day, every day, so. But, I mean, and that's why I don't have a duplicator, because I do all the things that nobody else wants to do. I've got 3 balusters that are the same. I've got a single baluster, but I mean, you can't do that on a duplicator. It's not worth it.
I had a friend in Tennessee and he made a spinning ball, bed busts and stuff. Always made them all by hand.
Well, I mean, everything I do,
He says you don't, just like he always told me, he said you just don't get the detail.
calipers and a tape measure, and that's all you need. And be able to reproduce it, so. Any questions? Yes, sir.
You mentioned sharpening your skews.
Mhm.
Tell us about your process for doing that. What kind
I use a Tormac.
Okay. So you
I-
just use the regular stone or?
I do use the regular stone, whatever their proprietary stone is, but I'm on my 3rd one, and I've been using it for a long, long time, so.
The short skew that you have that you're using for drilling, you sharpen that by hand or?
Oh, the short spindle gouge?
Yeah,
No, I use the Wolverine.
okay.
I am truly old school. I have 2 Wolverines, one on a 6-inch grinder, which is a bow door that I've had for 40, maybe 50 years now. And, there are people that will tell you that you can't get a decent grind on a 6-inch grinder. I beg to differ. Everybody says you have to have an 8-inch. And I still use an 80 grit Norton 3X stone. And I do everything on that. And I don't hone anything but my skew. And 90% of the time on the skew, I can take it back to the leather strop on the Tormac and touch it up. When I demo, I always carry 2, because at some point I'm gonna drop one on the floor and that long point's gonna get gone. So I have another one in the bag that's perfectly sharp. So, but, I mean, and I'm a firm believer that everybody needs to learn to use the skew. It teaches you more about wood turning than anything else. It literally is all about the bevel. And you cannot cheat with the skew because it will bite you big time. And trust me, I have been bitten by it on numerous occasions. And it's always that very last cut on that most important project that you've ever worked on.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, you never get a catch on the first cut. Have you ever noticed that?
Just, it's always when it's just, all right.
Yeah.
Just one more cut on
Yeah,
here.
just one more, so I can skip the 150 or 220 grit and jump on into the 400. So, well, thank you for having me. I hope you enjoyed that. And